Aftershocks right here on Aftershocks TV and Heavy Metal Television. And joining me today is a guy that probably a lot of you sort of know, but you may not know his name, but you're going to learn. You're going to learn the name to go with the face. You've almost certainly seen him out there with Y&T. You might have seen him with the Frank Hannon Band, and you've certainly heard some of the production work that he's done. He is Mr. Aaron Leigh. Aaron, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you, man. Dude, it really is funny, going through your bio and reading it. And I was like, okay, I have this record. I have this record. I've heard this record. I've seen Y&T. And yet, the name never, kind of passed. So maybe that's a good place to start, is for people that don't know, give them a history, a little history about yourself, because you're quite the busy guy, and you've touched a lot of projects that a lot of our fans would certainly be familiar with.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how far back to go, but in 2012 things changed dramatically when I met Frank Hannon.
Right.
So that's where I'll start from there. When I got in Frank's solo band, it was just I ran into him in a restaurant one day, didn't even know it was him, really turned around, introduced myself. Next thing, I'm in his band. And which was, it was total honor and a surprise. And he's just such a great guy. He's a great friend. And so, when I got in with Frank, many doors would open. I was in the circle, hanging around the Tesla guys. And what's cool about Frank is at one point when his solo band, we couldn't tour, we couldn't play because Tesla was starting to get busy. Frank had the idea to bring me out on the road to work for Tesla. Okay. And so basically working for Tesla, I started doing merch for Tesla and selling t-shirts, man. Right. And then I graduated to being his guitar tech out on the Def Leppard Styx tour. And so that, again, started just meeting more people, being in the right, circle of people. And so with all this time that I spent working for Tesla, which was probably a good couple of years, solid years of teching and being around them. Then Jill Menichetti from Y&T caught wind that I was a tech. And she called and asked if I would cover 30 days of a U.S. tour of Y&T because their tech couldn't make it. Okay. So, of course, I jumped at the chance, to be able to hang with Dave and the guys and be able to, hold Dave Menichetti's legendary 68 Les Paul and change strings on it and get to know it and, hang out. But the thing about that is that was the turning point, is being out on the road with Y&T for 30 days. As a tech, I think it allowed them to get to know me better. They already knew I could play bass. And 3 weeks after I got home off the road with them, I get an email asking if I was into maybe joining the band. Wow. So with all that right there in a condensed version of, from Frank Hannon to Y&T, I just say this: never be above doing things that you may feel like you're above, but doing these other tasks may get you to the next level of where you need to go. And you don't know that until you do it. So that's what I did, man.
No, dude, that is such a crazy, that is not the normal story of, well, we were in a band and we were 20 and we were playing in LA and, this guy saw us. I mean, that is the true nature of wanted it and made it happen, man. More than almost any musician can say.
Yeah. Being a musician my whole life, and of course, being in local bands. I'm from San Jose, California. Okay. And at one point there was a pretty strong music scene in San Jose. We had a lot of clubs to play. And so, of course, I was in original bands, I was in cover bands. I was just doing what every other musician was doing. But like I said, meeting Frank, that's when things change. So it truly is the nature of who you know in this business to get you to where you might need to be,
Sure, definitely. Now, in addition to being a musician, you are you're a production guy as well. And you've worked with quite a few people production wise. Do you have a preference? Do you like doing production over playing? Do you like playing over production? Is it whatever pays the bills? I mean, how do you gauge it?
Well, I really enjoy the artistry of being in the studio, recording, mixing. I love setting up, micing everything up and doing that whole bit and the technical aspects of it. I really enjoy that part of it. But then, nothing beats being in front of a live audience and making that connection with people that are like-minded, that love music as much as you. They may not be able to play the instrument, but they're absorbing it just like you're giving it. So it's a great give and take, and I really really value that as well. So it's not one or the other, really. It's actually a means to the end, to go out and do a gig, or be in the studio and recording some music.
Sure, definitely. And the interesting thing is, as a musician, I have to imagine that it kind of really it gives you insight to the music because you know what you're trying to get and you know how to get there, where a lot of guys just show up and play and they need guidance. But at the same time, I know 1,000,005 musicians, same as you do, and none of y'all are ever satisfied with anything that you do. And I have to imagine when you're in the production world, that makes it even harder for you to say, okay, this is done. This is complete. No?
It's so difficult to call something done. What's great is, well, there's a saying, I don't even know if I get the saying right, but you don't ever finish a mix, you turn it in. Okay. So you can always go back and change things or fix things. And that's kind of the part of the problem with having studios in your home and just having easy access to recording, is that you can live with something for a long time, and maybe you've passed the exit, if you know what I mean. Like, and then you have to find your way back to where you were before, because you've changed things, you've had the options to go in and re-record stuff, or like some of our favorite bands, you like the demos better than the actual masters that they put out. So
Yep.
as an example, because back in the day when you were recording to tape, and you only had so many options, you had to commit and you lived with it, and that was it. Okay, that I can live with that. You did your best. But nowadays, man, it's just, you can constantly fiddle around with a mix, or tweaking this frequency or that frequency. It's like, but yeah, you have to get to a point where you can just let it go.
Yeah, dude, I've always thought that too about our heroes. If the Led Zeppelin, especially Led Zeppelin, but Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Aerosmith, whatever, if they would have had the ability, especially a guy like Jimmy Page, to be in a studio today with Pro Tools and all that, we would have never had any of the classic Led Zeppelin, because 90% of what made them great was that the fuck ups fit. You know what I mean? So, we would have
Absolutely.
never had that now.
Yeah, and what's great is those fuck ups, as you put it, are the nuggets in the song that you gravitate to. Like, you love those parts. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
It
Fuck
is.
ups.
Nice. Well, dude, obviously, in addition to being in Y&T and in Frank Hannon's band, you are branching out now to doing your own music. You have a new single out called "Live for Today," and you have an EP that's just self-titled. So talk a little bit about the decision to do your own thing, while at the same time being a member of other bands.
Well, as with most musicians and entertainers, when we got locked down and venues closed down and we couldn't tour, it's like, well, what else is there to do, really? I would be doing myself a disservice if I didn't take advantage of the time to be creative. So that's basically how that went. I was hoping that Y&T might have been able to, rally together to at least put out a song, a single or something, but nothing happened with that. So I just took it upon myself to just focus on writing my own music and doing my own thing, just to basically just keep myself busy and be creative. I started with one single, which was entitled "Insanity," and
Right.
that was September 2020 is when I released that. But things just kept coming. I just had more material that kept coming through, and so I just kept recording. And once I had, you know, like 4 songs, I just compiled them to an EP, and that way I'd have a physical product out there. And but then, you know, Live for Today came along, and that's another single that I just released. And so it's just going to continue. You know, I don't see an end to it. I might as well just keep rolling as long as I'm being fed songs wherever they're coming from, you know.
Sure. Now, I want to go back to Insanity for a second before we go to Live for Today. That song has a hook that could catch a whale, man. That is such a cool jam, man. I
Oh, thank you, man.
really like that, man. Talk a little bit about that song specifically, because it seems like it's very impassioned, very personal, and yet it's one of the production wise. It just I, I don't know how to say it better than it just sounds amazingly good in headphones. You know,
Oh,
it has that
well,
great sound. So, you know, talk about that one for a minute.
well, again, thank you for the kind words, man. I mean, I really take a lot of pride in production, and you know, like we were just talking earlier, you know, some songs or musicians or however they're doing their production, a lot of it can sound very similar these days. It's just kind of sometimes hard to tell when you turn on the radio of some of these new bands that, you know, there's a certain tonality that just it's very similar. And I'm from the old school, man. I you know, try to think it more in vintage terms or of you know, sounds and sonics, you know. So with Insanity, that's kind of where that was coming from production wise. And you know, the lyrical content was just basically looking around at what's going on and how insane the world is, really. And to, if we could ever just escape this, even for a minute, you know, it would be a great thing, you know. But it's a daily grind of insane things that go on in our world, and it's just how we navigate around it to conduct our lives, you know.
Yeah, no question, man. Now, you know, just from a production standpoint, and it's something I can never get a good answer from anybody from, and I'll try from you, and maybe we'll get one, maybe not. But why is I? Let me back up. I think the greatest disservice of production in 2021, and it started maybe 3-4 years ago, but it's been going. It just continues to go, is that everybody tries to record everything on 20. You know, everything is bricked. You know, when you open it up in a Wave Lab or something, it's full blast. And to me, as a music fan, yeah, it's great that I can put it on my phone and it's loud, but at the same time, there's no texture, there's no tonality, there's nothing. It's just, you know, through the headphones. And I don't understand why musicians accept that. I don't understand why they, you know, because you guys put so much time crafting these songs together and building the layers and creating the soundscape, just to have it wrecked by production that is just, you know, floated up to 11. I never understand why that is a trend that is going on right now. Do you have any idea? Or
Yeah, I have a really good idea why it's like that.
okay.
Reason being is, I mean, uh, later in the 90s into the 2000s is when the loudness wars started happening, you know, trying to get your master louder than the next guys. So when it comes on the radio, you know, we didn't have streaming still back then.
Sure.
But when it would come on the radio, that it was just jumping through the speakers louder than the next guy. Or your CD being in one of those CD changers, you know, that if your CD wasn't up to snuff with the next CD that was playing, you know. So that's where that started, really. But I totally agree with you. When you brick wall limit something, you're taking all the dynamics and you're just squashing it into just a flat line.
Yeah.
Music wasn't meant to be listened to or even, you know, accepted in that way. Music is a dynamic thing. Leaving the dynamics in, I think, gives it a little more life, emotion to it. Also, you know, there's such a thing as called a volume knob. You know, if you're, let's say a song comes on, you just, let's say, heard the latest, as an example, Dirty Honey. They're great band. I love the
Love
band. I love their songs. But as we were talking, their masters are slam, man.
it.
And it, you know, it's what it is. It's the competition in the market, really. But especially with streaming services, you know, But what's interesting with the streaming services now is you have to submit to a certain dB level. And I think it's like minus 14 or something. And I've just been learning all this stuff because I've been doing all this on my own, with my own solo music. So I did a lot of research in this to know how to submit your track to streaming services, because if it's slammed too loud, they're just going to turn it down anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So by taking all the dynamics out of the mix and squashing it to death, limiting it to death, they're still going to limit on the other side of the streaming service. So you're kind of doing yourself a disservice there, Leave the dynamics there, give it some breathing room, and then if people want to turn it up, they can turn it up.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing, and I know we keep going back to the classics, but so much of the classic stuff that is still stadium fillers anytime they decide to make a a tour happen. So much of that was recorded in soundscape fashion. I'd take a band like, pick one, Genesis, Pink Floyd. There's two. There's so much going on in the songs that literally you can hear it one way on a stereo, you can hear it another way in a set of headphones, you can hear it another way in a car, and you hear all the dynamics because they didn't brick wall everything. And it's just amazing to me that so many bands don't want to accomplish that. And maybe it's just because we have such short attention spans right now that people are just like, well, if it doesn't catch them in 30 seconds, they're not going to catch my band anyway. But it just seems like a lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. But what's even a sadder thing is, musicians and artists, producers, mixers, we jump through all these hoops to try to make it sound the best it can possibly sound. At least I do. But people listen to stuff on their phone. So you're listening out of a tiny little microscopic speaker that's not giving you any low end. It's just giving you a bunch of mids and highs, So now there's even engineers that are starting to mix for the phone. I mean, where you're taking the bass and you're tailoring the bass guitar. You're taking out everything from like 80 hertz down, and then you're bumping all these low mids so it'll translate through a phone or a computer. So I think we're starting to get lost on that side of it. Let's bring it back.
Sure.
Dynamics, man. That's the life of music.
Do you think vinyl helps bring the dynamics back? Because just vinyl will sound terrible if it's brick walled. It'll sound just awful.
Well, the vinyl record will skip if it's too loud when you're cutting vinyl. Because with the Y&T acoustic album, I was in touch with the mastering engineer, and he was saying, because I was the one who mixed that album, and he was saying we need to turn down some things here because it is a little loud. Because of course I was thinking in terms of streaming services, things like that.
Sure.
But when you cut vinyl, you only have so much time on a side, and you can only squish so much into grooves. So you have to kind of tailor the volume, for that to work. And I think that's back in the day, like the Rush records or the Floyd records, or, you go back to the classics, the Beatles, Beatles is a prime example. They used to try to fit like 12 songs on a side because their songs were short.
Right.
But as you got to the tail end of the record, the last few songs started sounding really distorted because they're cramming all that sound into those small grooves, So now that we don't have to worry about that, that's the thing. That's why things are so loud,
Right.
They used to have to turn it down for vinyl, not turn it up.
You're right. Definitely, man. Well, dude, you certainly have found a way to capture the soundscapes. And for people that haven't heard it yet, they should look up your latest single, "Live for Today," which is it's kind of a theme to your music that I've heard anyway. The 5-6 songs that I've heard is it has lush soundscape to it. You can delineate between drums and guitars and bass and vocals, and it's from a production standpoint, it's cool. I also like the fact that you've kind of reached back to the classic rock sound without creating dated music, which that's a tough pill to swallow. That's very hard to do.
Yeah. Well, I'm not when I went into starting to write for myself and releasing solo music, I definitely didn't have any thought in my head about being contrived, of a certain sound. I've really appreciated artists that when you listen to their music, there's some diversity within the different songs. Not every song has the same feel or same production, or I've always really enjoyed that. And a prime example of that is someone like a Lenny Kravitz. He, one song has a real retro feel, but then the next song can have a real modern feel, and he just kind of lets the music guide him with the sonics, I think. And that's kind of where I'm coming from, is nothing is really contrived. It's just what's flowing through, and just, so I'm trying to be honest and from my heart, and it's just what it is.
Sure.
It's what's coming out.
What lessons are you learning now as kind of a front man, versus the fact that you've been, you spent the last 10 whatever years with guys that clearly run their camps.
Hmm.
Obviously Meniketti runs his camp, and certainly Frank Hannon and the
Yeah.
Frank Hannon band runs his camp. Now you don't have that guy. Now you're that guy, that kind of has to dictate it. So what lessons have you learned, doing it yourself, that maybe you didn't know from watching the other guys, lead the show?
Well, the first thing I have learned is that it's a lot more work. Okay. Down to, I mean, just when you're recording as a musician, that's the fun part. You're in your studio or your space or wherever you're doing it, and that's great, and you're in it, and then you're done with a song. Well, what's next? Now you got to release it, and then you got to jump through a bunch of hoops to do this, to get it out to the world the proper way. And then from there you got to promote it somehow, which, thank God, that there's people out there like yourselves that are listening to new music and pushing that stuff out, and much appreciated. um, but there's so many different levels of being a solo guy, and I don't have a manager, I don't have a team or anything. I'm just doing everything on my own. And I've learned a lot from Frank, actually, is watching over the years of how he conducts his solo thing. And so I've kind of taken from him at certain points of, how did he do this? Well, maybe I should do the same thing, because it worked for him. Do what works, and then the other trials to it is just learn from the mistakes and try not to do it on the next song you release.
Right.
Um, and that's one thing that I learned with releasing Insanity, and then I've released July Judy, and then a song called Tell Me. Those two songs after Insanity, I feel like I almost kind of dropped the ball in the promo department. Like, I should have really tried to push those a little more somehow, but I didn't really have an avenue. And
Mhm.
then I talked to Frank a little bit, and he had mentioned a couple things I should be doing, and I did that, and it seems to be working for Live for Today, for this single. So yeah.
Sure. So what is the end goal, if there is an end goal, for Aaron Leigh versus being in the bands? Are you looking to find enough traction to get away from the other bands and do this on your own, or is it something that you're doing for the love of the music, or where are you trying to get to?
That's a great question, Chris. I I just did an opening slot for Warrant on last Saturday. Um, I did a solo acoustic set, and I had some people asking me, "Are you going to be doing any original music?" And I said, "Well, I'm not going to be playing any of my songs, because I'm doing a solo acoustic. I don't want to come out kind of limp with, let's say, Live for Today on acoustic. It's not really built for that. I need a band to
Right.
do that." And all these songs actually require a full band to do that, to go out and play live, and doing it solo. Um, so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm at a crossroads with, do I have the time, and do I want to invest the time into putting together a band? Because that's, again, taken on a lot of work on myself. I
Mhm.
just don't know how busy Y&T is going to be at this moment. We're still kind of in this uncertainty of how venues are, how busy we're going to get, how booked up we're going to get. So I can't really make a move until Y&T starts to get back into the flow of things. And then I can kind of gauge, how far I want to push the solo Aaron Leigh thing,
Is that frustrating?
It is frustrating. Yeah. Because it's unknown, you just don't know until you're there. And then it's like, all right, well, it's a good thing I didn't try to do that because now I'm really busy over here. So it's just a waiting game right now, but
Right.
I
And the other thing that could end up happening is you try to do the solo thing, and if it doesn't take off, well, you've given up the Y&T gig.
yeah, well, I would never give up my gig in Y&T. That's, I mean, unless I get canned or, so I, no, I mean, I see myself sticking around as long as possible with Y&T. Y&T, since I was a teenager, has been one of my favorite bands of all time. And to be in it is a dream come true. So I'm not willing to give that up right now to go out and do my solo thing. I mean, there's always going to be some downtime that I can devote to it. It's just I've got to know when that downtime is going to be. That's where I'm at with it.
Right. Dude, I got to tell you, just a fun. I'm a gigantic Y&T fan. As long as I can remember, I've had Y&T records, and actually, when I lived out there, I was stationed in the military in Central in Fort Ord, so I used to come up all the time to like Monterey or San Jose or San Francisco for shows and whatnot. I actually caught two quote unquote final show evers of Y&T. Yeah, I caught one was at Club Monterey in Monterey, and one was at Doc Ricketts on the boardwalk in I think it was in San Francisco. But two different shows that were billed as the final show ever of Y&T, and here we are. Dude, that was like in the 1990. So here we are 30 years later, and Y&T is still going on. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. Well, hey, back in that time, there was a lot of, the 80s bands, man, that at that point just, they had to hang it up for a little while. But no, it's a great thing that Y&T finally did come back, and that there's, the fans are great. They really are a diehard, set of fans, and they'll travel, they'll come see us in different countries. They'll come. I mean, when we played in Japan, I mean, there was people from America that flew over there, so it was just to see the band in Japan, it's a really cool thing. Great fans.
Yeah. And dude, it's not an easy gig for a guy like you. Everybody makes a big deal about Meniketti, and as they should. He's pushing 70 years old and he's still doing almost 3 hours a night and sounds note perfect doing it. But for you guys in
Yes.
the band too, you're doing 3 hours a night as well without the acclaim. You're just coming out and ripping every night. I saw you guys here in Cleveland, or in Cleveland area. I think it was in Akron, actually. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. So, it's a hell of a show, and it's, more than most of the contemporaries of Y&T. You guys, the band Y&T really does a great job at a full retrospective of a 50-year career, 40 whatever years it's been. It's an amazing show, man.
Well, thank you, man. And that's all due to just Y&T has a great catalog. There's not a bad song. And so what's difficult though is, of course, you got to play the Summertime Girls. You got to play the Lipstick and Leather. There's certain songs, Black Tiger. There's just certain songs you got to play every night. But we tend to slip in different songs here and there, different shows, as we're going along on a tour, mainly just to keep us interested, and on fire with it. But also I know that the diehard fans, man, they really appreciate that as well. So a show, let's say in one city is going to get a little bit of a different set than the next night, so you just don't know. And again, Dave is just, he's on fire, man. I mean, the guy hasn't lost a thing. And when he just, hey, let's try this one tonight. It's like, really? You want to go there, huh? All right. Well, I'm with you. Let's go,
Right. No doubt, man. Well, dude, I'm going to give you the option ahead of the question to either give me the polite dodge or give me the straight answer. And it's your call which one you choose, and I won't argue with you about it. But why is it that we don't have new Y&T music? It's been 11 years, man.
You know, I'm not really clear on the only thing I can really say about that is that at that the last few years, last 5 years, I guess, minus this year that we couldn't tour, but just been busy touring. And it's almost like, when you get home, the last thing you want to do is get back in a room and because it would take a few months of really collectively being together, writing. I don't know if Dave is up for that. I mean, we've talked about it, but it just kind of it's just talk and then it goes away. I would have, like I said earlier, I would have thought that in this downtime, I mean, we wouldn't even have to be together. We can do it online, like sending files back and forth like most people do. We wouldn't even have to be in the same room. But I don't know, honestly, Chris. I don't know what's up with that. And I hope that something will spark it and break. I mean, I even said just one song. Let's just do
Yeah.
one song, man. Put it out, And I know people would flip their lids, man. But I can't really give you a solid answer on that.
That's fine. Well, tell Dave from me, get to it. Let's go.
All right, I will definitely. I try to use all the ammo I can when it comes to that.
Right.
Let's go. Come on.
No doubt. Now, Aaron, am I right in thinking that you worked with a guy that I really like, a newer guy, James Durbin? Did you work with him?
Yeah, I did. Actually, James is a friend,
Okay.
and he lives in Santa Cruz, and so he's close enough. But he had me mix 5 songs on one of his albums, um, and I have had him open for Y&T. I was the conduit to that, to have him as a solo, his solo acoustic thing open up for us a few times actually. James is just a really talented guy. I love his work ethic. Again, he's just one of those guys that I even kind of look at what he does and how he's doing it, because he's doing everything by himself. Take a little bit from what he's doing as well. But yeah. I mean, beyond the 5 songs that I mixed on his record, and then him opening for Y&T and things like that. That's about as to the extent of that. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, he's I personally think he doesn't get nearly enough credit for the talent that he has. I mean, he is a straight up reminds me of like Jeff Tate in a way,
yeah.
as far as just the talent level, not the sound, but the talent level is there. I'm curious from you, from a production standpoint, working with a guy like that, is it easier to work with a guy like that that's a little bit green? And I mean, he's done a few records now, but he's still a little bit green as far as how to use his voice and how to guide a song versus like a Frank Hannon, a Dave Meniketti, the more established guys that come in just knowing exactly what they have to do.
Well, that is James. He knows what he wants to do.
Okay.
He's got it in his head of what he's going to do, down to the mixing of it as well. When I mixed the songs, I had versions that I was really digging. He'd say, "Hey, can you change this a little bit and put this? I want this like this." And of course, I'd make the changes, and he liked it. So well, especially like with this metal album he just released.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, and also Mike Vanderheel played drums on that record as well, the drummer for Y&T. So he might even be a guy you might want to ask about that. But I think that he knows exactly what he wants to do. I mean, he told me about this metal record he was going to record long before he even did it, and he was even asking me if I want to submit some songs, because I got some heavier stuff as well. And I was entertaining that thought, and then I thought, you know what, I want to save this stuff for Y&T. Is
Sure.
what I was thinking. These bits of nuggets here and there. So, but yeah, man, no, James is just one talented guy. Great singer, great vocalist. His range is incredible.
Yeah, he's really he's an amazingly talented kid, or I guess he's not really a kid anymore, but he's amazingly talented, and he's a you know, I've had a chance to interview him once, and I've talked to him another time, and just seems like he's a really genuine like guy. He doesn't seem like he's putting on, considering, the whole American Idol thing and the attention that he got from that. He doesn't seem like he's very influenced by that at all. He still seems like a pretty straight shooter, normal kind of guy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he did get to jam with Judas Priest, so that's pretty cool. He does have that kind of a Rob Halford feel, to his voice when he wants, but he can also, sing a great ballad as well, and be really intimate with his voice too.
No question, man. Well, another guy that I know that can sing with the best of them is Mr. Aaron Leigh, who has this great new single. It is called "Live for Today." I suggest everybody go out there and check it out, as well as the EP, which is on all the streaming services now, just simply called Aaron Leigh. And Aaron, where should we tell people to go to keep up with you and find out where you're going to be and where to get the music and all that stuff?
First place would be aaronleigh.com, and that's AARONLEIGH.com. And that's pretty much got all my social links there. It's got the music on the website. I've got Live for Today streaming on the website, which, how we were talking about sonics, earlier, in production. What I found is, listening to Live for Today on the streaming services, opposed to actually streaming it off my website, it sounds way better off the website because it's the full file. It's not broken down into a small, bits and pieces
Right.
of an MP3. So if you want to stream Live for Today off the website, it's going to sound great. Go there.
Very cool, man. Well, Aaron, once again, the new single "Live for Today" is available now. And dude, thanks so much for joining us here on Aftershocks.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate it, man.